Happy to welcome in Howard Milton, Chief Development Officer at the University of Illinois, the athletic department. Coming off a big win, not just on the football field, but off the field, is Larry Gies, as you guys called it, a transformational gift, and it's really hard to argue with that. Howard, thanks for coming in and telling us a little bit about this. What a big deal, huh? What was that like? Was this like your Super Bowl when you got the final word?
You know what? Absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. It's like a college playoff and playing on that that last weekend, right? Just a tremendous effort by the entire university, our entire team, and of course, our athletic director, Josh Whitman, who has just have been fortunate enough to fundraise with him the last almost decade. And he just, it never ceases to amaze me once we connect him with people, how we're able to really stretch gifts and maximize gifts and maximize relationships. So it was a long journey for us, several years when you're working on something like that, but boy, we sure are grateful.
Take me back to the start, Howard. How does this even begin? This big of a gift, and just the idea that, what was 20 million the highest you'd ever gotten before? I mean, right. How does this even start for you guys?
Yeah, well, you know what we like to say is the first thing we do is we have to earn the right to ask, right? You have to earn the right to ask, and so started several years ago with actually Larry reaching out. Well, Josh and Larry, I think that's a well-known fact. Josh had gone to Larry early on just to meet him. And without ever asking him a thing, because he knew he hadn't earned the right to ask, Larry was pretty upfront with, hey, just know I'm never going to give to athletics. Right. So that was the first stage. And the second stage was just after COVID, Larry wanted to meet, and we met in his office, and he did ask what our needs would be. And we knew that would be to answer that question. Obviously, Memorial Stadium's at the center of our needs. Little did we know the impact COVID would have, and then this thing called the house settlement, revenue share, name, image, likeness wasn't a thing when we first met. And so we had to sort of delay that and kind of figure out, get our arms around all of that. And then from there, it was a series of conversations and a series of just spending a lot of time together. We took some trips where we had a chance just to be with Larry, and Larry spent some time with Josh. And then, of course, Chancellor Jones, who was here and is gone, spent some time with Larry. And all the kudos in the world go to Gies College of Business, because I like to tell people, as it relates to this gift, if they don't do that right and execute that gift right, this doesn't happen, right? So that was stewardship and cultivation for this gift.
So how does it get to the point? Larry said, or Josh said that Larry told you guys to think big. So as you and Josh are meeting, when did it get this big, and how did that come out? I can't imagine asking for 9 figures, Howard.
Yeah, right. It got that big when you realize the things that you want to do the stadium, and still sort of ironing some of those things out. We know that we want Memorial Stadium to be. We know that we want to offer the absolute best fan experience in the nation, right? And so when you start thinking about Memorial Stadium, I think turning 100 last year was a kind of a centerpiece for us as we worked through this, knowing that the 100th anniversary came up. That lined up really nicely, right? And so really that's where we're at. What are our needs? We want to make this fan experience better. We know that football and these new contract tracks to stay in the Big Ten, and that's tongue in cheek, right? But to be competitive in the Big Ten would mean really we need to invest in that number one sport, in my opinion, and it's football. So talking through that with Larry, obviously he agreed, and the significance of that historic building across the street from me here. We landed on $100 million for what it would take to get started on those things.
How do you develop a relationship with Larry? Obviously, this place means a lot to him.
Yeah,
the program obviously means a lot to him. But how do you develop that relationship? How long does that take, and what does it take to get something like this kind of buy-in?
Years, right? Years. It takes years for gifts, far less than that. So a lot, what I would still consider a lot in my household. But still, it takes years. What it takes is you have to be candid. You have to be able to be very honest and trust conversations. I think Josh and I have a saying that we don't hide the ball when we fundraise, meaning we we don't want you to be surprised on any ask, right? So we're pretty upfront early on in a conversation, like, look, we want to really cultivate. We realize we haven't earned the right to ask, but we're beginning with the end in mind, and we hope by the time we get to some on this journey, right, that we are able to have a conversation with you about, making gifts, significant gifts, the university, and we did have conversations about is that 25 million, is that 50 million, is that 80 million, is it 100 million, is it more, is it less, what is that? And then Jeremy, all those things have to add up, right? So the donor, number one, has to have that capacity. So we can't miss on the capacity. Boy, that'd be embarrassing if we asked and he didn't have the capacity. And number two, just the timing, right? Whether it's $10 at my household or $100 million in Larry's household, that timing has to work with a whole host of other things. Where you at in your life's journey, right? Because that changes. Our donors aren't the same 1 year as they were 5 years ago, right? And so those things change, and we just really got fortunate in terms of the timing.
Obviously, Josh is the face of this athletic department.
Yeah.
And there's so many people behind the scenes being able to do the projects he wants, have the fundraising he wants. But in the end, he's got to be a closer, just like I imagine Brett Bielema's got to be a closer,
right? No
for
question.
recruits. So what have you seen from him? You've been with different athletic directors, different athletic departments. Like, what makes him effective in the fundraising aspect of the job?
Yeah. Two things. He's an excellent listener. And he's a really excellent communicator. He's very clear, very concise. He has no problem being honest and vulnerable, which I think takes a layer. It takes the relationship to a different place. Honestly, he's very trusting of our staff to cultivate properly. And I love the way you said, kind of like Brad or Coach Bielema would be with their assistants. It's a great example of let's make sure this is the right fit, if you will. Let's make sure the capacity is the right thing. The project, it's a passion point for this donor. And he does all of that. But preparation is very important. Like we don't just happen into conversations, and there are plenty of organic conversations. But in this, there are plenty planned and tactical conversations too, where we know going in, these are the things we want to accomplish in this particular meeting or conversation. And we're pretty upfront about those things, and it's almost checking a box, right? And being patient. So Josh is excellent at all those things. And he's sincere as he does them, as authentic as he does them. And I think our donors appreciate that. And so, all those things make him, I think, an exceptional fundraiser. And my job, of course, is to be a conduit.
Yeah.
Right. Like, here's a donor that has capacity. I think that seems to be ready. I've asked him as much. Hey, come over here, meet this guy. And then I sit back and watch a tennis match, a little bit. So that's always fun.
What, obviously there's $100 million earmarked mostly for football and Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I imagine that just lifts the entire athletic department and what you guys want to do financially. So what does this mean for the athletic department to get a gift of this size to help the number one revenue generating program?
Yeah. Well, it's excellent. Great point. I think, it's really going to make an impact on that number one revenue generating sport. But then I also think I go back to the things we'll be able to do for our fans and legitimize Illinois football. Brett obviously started that, but I think it's and then the third thing is it really has gotten the attention of other donors, right? What I do want to make a point of anytime I speak about this gift is that's huge. It's an enormous gift. There is no gift too small, right? Now it's funny because I said that in front of Larry, and Larry goes, "Well, you didn't tell me that," right? But I think it's motivated people. The other night we got a check for $100,000. Somebody just wrote it to us because they were so moved and motivated by that gift. And there's a lot of difference between 100 million and 100,000, but boy, what a gift. I mean, what an awesome, generous gift that was. And so it really, I think, puts a lot of donors, I hate to say on notice, I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, hey, we can all do this. And, if everybody does their part, we think we can really create some resources here for our student athletes.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think it motivates other donors? Because I know Josh mentioned that too. Like, what is the impact there?
Yeah, I think folks, number one, on a real base level, say, well, God, this guy can give 100 million. Surely I can give 1,000 or 500. Whatever fits. Maybe that's proportionate to what my wealth is, right? Right. Maybe I can do that. And then I also think we have a lot of momentum. Right. Obviously, we have as much momentum as since you've been covering, and I've been working here. I can't think of in my 26 years a time with more momentum. And I think that this gift makes people further recognize that momentum and by extension want to be a part of it, right? And want to see us change. And it really, this gift for me and so many of us makes you say, well, why not Illinois, right? Why can't we? You see these other gifts and these other schools with great football programs. Why not here? We've got all the resources, all the people. It's a great place. It's located in a great place. It's a world-class university. We know that. But so why not? Why not Illinois? And I think this gift and people jumping in, I think that's part of it.
Howard, I want to add, you have been here, 2 decades here.
Yeah.
You've been covering this program for about 15 years. You had a son who was a baseball player.
Yeah.
What's your perspective about where this athletics program is at right now?
I get teary-eyed. I actually get emotional because and it's a lot of work, got great people. And Josh said it was going to be like turning an aircraft carrier when he started. I said, well, shit, I don't know if I want to turn an aircraft carrier. Let's get this thing going. Alabama got it going. It wasn't an aircraft. You just look, but it is. It was turning one there. It was turning one at Wisconsin years ago. It was turning one, a program I like to refer to as K-State, right? I mean, they won a lot of football games. And at some point, Snyder had to turn that thing. So it's just fantastic. I mean, just the people and what we've had to do in terms of just being really thoughtful and see ourselves different maybe than we used to, if I'm being candid. We were in Chicago when Lovey started. I love this story. and Coach Smith had started, and we were going to go to whenever they do the media days, right? And during those media days in the evenings, it's customary that all the schools that are there would take their donors to dinner because everybody's got donors in Chicago, right? And Lovey, I remember talking to him and his wife and saying, "Hey, I'll meet you downstairs. I got a couple cabs that we'll go to dinner in." And as I sit down there, of course, I'm early. You got to be early. Josh is upstairs. As I'm down there, I call them the Reds, the Wisconsins and the Rutgers and, all the red schools come out and jump in these big Sprinter vans, these fancy deals. And I've got cabs. And while I was watching that, Lovey called and said, "Hey, we'll catch another ride, And I finally said, "You know what? We've not done this before." So I went to this guy at the bell stand and said, "Hey, man, like I can't take Lovey Smith." And he was like, "Oh, my God, Lovey Smith's here, right?" Old Chicago coach. Yeah. I said, "I can't take him in a cab with our donor group over to our dinner. Help me out. What can we do in the next 10 minutes? He goes, "My buddy's right around the corner. He has a limo," right? So I said, "Call him, we'll do it." And then I called Coach Smith, said, "Hey, I got a limo." And all our donors came and jumped in the limo. But the reason I tell this story is the last person to jump in before me was Josh. And he hit me on the arm. He goes, "This is what I'm talking about." He's like, "If we're going to do this, we got to do this big. This is what Illinois deserves." Right? Now, it's not about limos, right? But it's about the perception. Like Chicago's our town, and I was going to drive up my cab. You know what I mean? When everybody else is driving up in something else. And so we're driving in something different, right? We handle ourselves something different. We want to entertain and cultivate at a really high level. That's the expectation. That's the expectation that we have for Brad Underwood. That's the expectation we have for Shauna and Brett, obviously. And so that has to be our expectation with our donors and our entire staff. Yeah. And I think that mindset alone, along with some good Midwestern humbleness, of course, right, combined has just really helped us take off. And oftentimes that may have nothing to do with the results on those Saturdays between the lines. I'm going to sit there and cheer just like everybody else, but it does have a lot to do with the culture we're building around winning.
It's a great anecdote about raising the standard, right?
Yeah.
Just raising the standard of the athletic program. I do want to ask this. I know you guys have hired an architecture firm. I know you don't have any answers of exactly what will happen yet, Howard. Yeah. But what is the goal with a gift like this of Memorial Stadium and upgrading it for you guys?
Yeah. We've got, it's interesting. We've got, if you look around Memorial Stadium, I wish I could take every fan on, and you've been on the road, on these road trips. I really wish I could load up a huge aircraft carrier, put Illinois fans on it, and get to every single location because they would see our green space. We're so fortunate, right? So outside of the stadia, right, outside of the arena, we've got all the makings of something special. Walk through lot 31 this Saturday, and you tell me. In fact, Jeremy, I call it waste management because there's no rules. It's like it doesn't play like the rest of tailgating anywhere else. It's kind of open-ended. I think what we're wanting to do, and I said this before, is first it's about fan experience, right? So we've got a lot of just a lot of small projects you can do just to clean the place up. It's an old building, and then from there it's lights, Wi-Fi. I think you've heard of some of this. Scoreboard. There'll be some work. There'll be some great announcements there, and then from there, there's been some loose talk about the south end zone that we're really studying. We take that serious. But to what degree we get there, we just don't know yet. And so I don't want to ruin any surprises that Josh has for people there. But again, if I were to encourage all these new season ticket holders that we've got and longtime season ticket holders, is there's some great changes on the way. And I think your fan experience will get better and better and better. And we know Brett's got us in a lot better position between the lines. Right. And so that combines going to make Gies Memorial Stadium just a terrific place to be.
Well, Howard, I know it's not just sit down and go on vacation for the next 3 months for you. So what's next on your docket?
No, right. How do you? Well, it's what have you done for me lately? There's no shortage. I was in the car last night with Josh and Chris Tuttle, going to we went over to Peoria to see a donor who's very interested in doing something significant for us. So we're excited about that. We'll start working these away games this weekend. I'm going to be half fan, half working because I want to get over. I won't be able to be over there the whole weekend. We've got a great trip to Washington planned with 150 plus donors. And then we've got really top of our priority list is our investor society. It's a philanthropic giving organization that we started last year. That is completely tax deductible, and it will allow us to support our new initiatives here and support the revenue shared era that we're in. So those kinds of things, I think you'll be hearing some great about some other gift announcements in the coming weeks that we've got ready to go, and some specific projects. Again, I don't want to steal the parade because I'm going to get on here again, but I think you'll hear about some great things coming up there too.
I want to ask you a little bit about that, and sorry to put this on you, but like the NIL aspect of it, now that everything's kind of coming in-house, does that come in under you, and what's the impact of that for you guys?
Yeah, first of all, I think we, if you wonder how we did during what I'll call the NIL 2.0 and 3.0 and all those different things were the last couple of years, we did really good. I mean, all you have to do is look at our teams to see the success we've had there. The current NIL does not, although my staff, if you will, there's like 12 or 13 of us now. We've added some staff because Josh wanted to invest in fundraising. We do a fair amount of work in that space. We connect folks that are interested in NIL deals, meaning donors, with Learfield, who's kind of running those. We work closely with Tom Moreland, who oversees our external units, to connect donors to the NIL space. It's interesting. If you go back 3 or 4 years ago, it was a dirty word. And then you jump in after 18 months after that, people were starting to come around. And then in the last year, it's been just part of our menu list now. And so now we've had a slight change. So what we're finding is a lot of people are saying, hey, I'd love to give the university, knowing that you need all these funds, and we trust you to do with it as you need, as you've got to fill this $20.5 million bucket, right? And so people have been really helpful there.
Awesome. Well, Howard, is there anything else you want to tell fans before I let you go?
Yeah, thank you for your support. We need you, Memorial Stadium. We need you. If you're interested in joining the Investor Society, please jump in. Give me a call directly. I'll get you connected with somebody that works in your part of the country. And then also, Jeremy, it has been fun watching you all the years do this and the enjoyment that you bring to our fans. You'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't. I go all over the country, and I will walk into someone's office, he or she, that is extremely busy. They've got 1,000 employees. But I can see on their computer, they've got you guys up. They've printed out things. I mean, I've gone places where people have printed out and like, hey, I just read this. And I thought, where'd they get it? And I see that they're members of and senior podcast. And these are some of the busiest people on earth, but that's where they get their fix.
It's a passionate fan base, Howard.
It is.
And I feel happy for them and you guys that they're experiencing this, right? Because it wasn't this way a decade ago. So, no, it's been great. It's an awesome fan base. We feel that, and I know you guys feel that.
Yeah, we think they deserve it. So thanks so much. Thanks for all you do. And ILL.
Thanks, Howard. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you.
We men will talk about farts until the day we die, but we don't talk enough about cleaning that cornhole. I gotta be honest, I've always been bidet curious, so when Tushy sent me their everyday luxury bidet, I couldn't wait to try it out, and as I just told my wife, it's a game changer. Tushy is easy to install, even for guys like me who know nothing about plumbing and aren't that handy. And I got to tell you guys, I've never felt cleaner after using it. I installed it in my bathroom downstairs, and that is going to be my designated dumper moving forward because of Tushy. 99% of people who wash with Tushy Wave feel cleaner and fresher after going number 2. Every Tushy bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing. Instead of wiping endlessly with toilet paper, Tushy pristinely removes 99% of bacteria while protecting your natural skin barrier thanks to the #1 natural ingredient, fresh water. Install only takes about 10 minutes, and Tushy Bidet gives you 2-in-1 benefits, reducing irritation and preventing micro tears with soothing water instead of scratchy toilet paper or damaging wet wipes. People who've made the switch to Tushy use up to 80% less TP as well. No more clogged toilets, no more wasting money on something that does an inferior job cleaning your body. So remember, a-hole is only a dirty word if you wipe. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code Illini at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code Illini. That's promo code Illini at hellotushy.com. All right, let's talk some hoops on the Illini Inquirer podcast. It's Jeremy Werner, Kyle Tausk. And Kyle, it's been great to have you, man. We've had some good recruiting updates, but one of our first assignments I had for you when you got on campus was catching up with the 2005 Final Four team. And you told me I was 1 year old when this team played. And I was like, yeah, that checks out. I was like 1 or 2 when the Flying Illini in 88-89 were playing. But what was that like for you as these kind of legends, Darren Williams, D. Brown, you're getting to talk with those guys?
Yeah, it was really cool. I was 1 year old when that Final Four happened, but it's impossible as somebody who grew up, both my parents went to Illinois. My dad is such a huge Illinois basketball guy, growing up an Illinois fan. Like, you can't stay away from the 2005 highlights and the memories, and you hear all the lore and everything like that. And even though I wasn't, alive and conscious during that run, it's impossible to not know the magnitude of that team around Illinois going in, but just to do a little bit more research and learn a little bit more about them. And then to be able to talk to those guys and hear some of the stories and hear firsthand, I just thought it was so interesting to hear Bruce Weber say, like, we had to sneak these guys in, secret elevators. Like, there was just such a phenomenon that team became. And just to see, even 20 years later, it's so apparent right away the special bond and connection that team had. I mean, you could tell immediately when those guys see each other, and they've gone on to do so many different things now. It just pick right back up where you left off. And there was a special connection with that team, and those guys talked about it. And I just thought it was really cool to kind of get that insight and to hear some of the memories and really just kind of learn more about exactly what that team was, because I didn't get to experience it, but I obviously was more than aware of what that team did. I've seen the Arizona game highlights many times. I've seen some of the big time moments from that team, and obviously just the way they played and the style of play that just captivated really the entire country, let alone just Champaign. But those guys were deservedly showered with love. And to hear an opening night of football for a top 12 Illinois team at the time, and to hear probably the biggest ovation of the night and the loudest crowd pop of the night was when D Brown was holding his Big Ten championship trophy and got introduced on the field. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and I think for like your generation, like the 2021 team would have been that team, but it was COVID. And I was fortunate to be one of the only ones in that building watching some of those games, but also, so we didn't get to share that team like that 0405 team was, and they were just a cultural phenomenon too. But I think that 2021 team was probably the next closest thing to it. But then they also just got upset, right? Like if they make a run to the Final Four and fans can be a part of that, and boy, if they would have gotten by Loyola Chicago, you feel like you at least would have been in the Elite Eight because you would have played Oregon State and then would have had a great game against Houston. But that team could have been one of those teams, but were robbed of it because of COVID and because they had a tough second round matchup and they didn't get to play in the NCAA tournament the year prior. So they weren't as prepared for that moment as the 0405 team, which had been through that so many times. So that's the one team that I feel like could have come close to that of this generation. The 23-24 team was great. Terrence on a monumental run, but with Io and Kofi and Georgie and all those guys, Trent Frazier, DeMonte Williams, that team had that appeal, but just didn't have quite the same because of those two reasons.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the other part of that team too, for somebody young like me who hasn't necessarily, I got into Illinois basketball maybe the early 2010, so it hadn't been as long for me. But I think the other thing about that team was just kind of bringing the program back, and that's team still did that. Losing to Loyola Chicago doesn't minimize the fact that team and that season was kind of the re-arrival of Illinois and Brad Underwood kind of getting the program back to the heights that it should be at and that the expectation is at. But I think that for that team, especially if they could have gotten to a Final Four, I think that team would have been not quite as much of a phenomenon as special as that 0405 team, because 38-2 or 37-2 is something that, coming 2 shots away from being undefeated. That's a little bit different level. But I think that team, for me, even the fact that I wasn't able to be in the arena to watch that team play, even the fact that there was such a disappointing upset loss in the tournament that came with that team, I still think that team is viewed that highly because of what it represented. But you're right. It took a little bit out of it. The fact that it was during COVID and the fact that, man, if you just get past that Loyola game, I do think that's probably a Final Four team, and they deserve to go a lot further than they did.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into it. We had a busy recruiting weekend here at Gies Memorial Stadium, and Illinois had a couple official visitors on campus. Cam Holmes, you caught up with. I caught up with Sinan Huan, 7-foot center out of China. Cam Holmes, top 30 prospect wing out of the Arizona in the class of 2026. Just kind of a versatile player. Big body, athletic, that Illinois doesn't really have right now. So what did you make of those two official visitors and just kind of the approach to this class so far that has 2 under the radar guys, Ethan Brown and Landon Davis? Now they're trying to add a couple more high pedigree guys here.
Yeah, they're shooting higher now in this class, which is to be expected. I think that's kind of going to be the approach that you see going forward. There's probably going to be 1 to 2 more developmental pieces in each class, just because I think you need those guys. You don't have to spend big resources to get those guys. The expectation immediately isn't going to be as high, so you actually have hope to maybe keep those guys around for multiple years. You can lay out a development plan. Whereas you start to get guys like Cameron Holmes and Juan, maybe to a lesser extent, but those guys are going to command big money or at least significant resources. And you kind of got to pick and choose in that realm of prospect, how all in you're going to go. And so I think these are 2 guys, obviously, that Illinois is very high on. We'll see with Holmes. I know you've talked about it. It's going to be hard to beat Arizona for him. In-state Arizona guy, an Arizona program that spent a lot on prep prospects here recently with Carter Bryant and Koa Pete. And I think that'll be tough, but it's definitely a guy that is in that realm of plug and play, immediate opportunity, a different type of piece that Illinois doesn't have. And then Huan is a guy that you kind of see as that bridge in the front court to where you have Tomislav Ivicic this year. Maybe you get Big Z back next year, or who knows what Tommy's future looks like, but then he's kind of that bridge into the future of being a guy who can come in and probably make an immediate impact in the front court. But I think it'll be interesting to see how Illinois handles prep recruiting here going forward. And you guys have asked Brad Underwood about it a ton, and he said that he doesn't really know what to do. And it's such an interesting time that we're in. I saw an article from Matt Norlander and on CBS Sports that was published yesterday, which I'd encourage people to read, because he wrote about that, how there's kind of a big disconnect, especially in the 2026 class, but even moving forward, there's just such a big disconnect in prep recruiting between programs and between prospects in terms of what the expectation is from a money standpoint, from a resource standpoint, based on the fact that it's kind of gotten out of control here recently. And the expectation has changed now in the revenue sharing era in terms of how much you're going to put into a guy. Whereas, there's been some crazy dollar figures, especially put into prep prospects here recently, where it's like, $2 million, $3 million for these high profile guys, high 4-star, low 5-star guys. Well, teams just don't have that money anymore. So the expectations, there's such a disconnect. So I think teams are going to have to be cautious in how they approach it and really kind of pick and choose when to go all in. And obviously we've seen Illinois take that approach in terms of coming off of last season, going more the older direction. And so we'll see how hard Illinois goes after some of these high profile prep guys going forward.
Yeah. Derek and I did a podcast about this a couple months ago where it's like, this was the main question, is what is prep recruiting anymore? And it's amazing, Kyle. Like, this used to be like the main thing we covered was prep recruiting and following these guys from the time they're sophomores all the way to seniors and see through fruition. Like, what's the roster going to look like in 2 or 3 years? A lot of fans, I think, are checking out of that. Like, the numbers kind of, bear that out from our side of things. I look at page views and whether people are actually talking about it. Like, it's just not as interesting anymore because, one, who knows what the roster is going to look like in a year or two? Two, do these prep recruits even stick around at all? And three, is it worth the investment? Is it really worth the investment when there is such turnover of your high school recruits? That's why I do find it interesting that you're going more towards, hey, let's take a few developmental guys. Maybe our evals can hit. Maybe they stick around for a little bit. But if they don't, we're not spending a huge portion of our cap towards them. And then I think the biggest question now that I have about these prospects is, how much are you willing to invest? Because there are prospects Illinois really likes that, do they want to spend 7 figures on a prep guy when they could just wait, get a prospect like Andrei Stojakovic, who's more proven, he's going to make an impact come the springtime. And that's what it all comes down to for me. Cause you could really like a Quentin Coleman, but if he goes to Wake Forest and another school and, they're just prioritizing more financially, you just got to take yourself out of the race. Right. And that seems to be the case with that one. With a Cam Holmes, are you willing to go all in on him on one of your most expensive roster spots? Josiah Jervis is going to visit in a week or two. How much are you willing to invest? I do think Illinois is going to invest heavily in one prep prospect, but you better be right on it, Kyle. You better be right, because is he going to make the big impact? So I think that's where prep recruiting has become, and I get why that's less interesting to people, and I get why, from a coaching staff perspective, are you willing to roll the dice on an 18-year-old or 19-year-old to be one of your biggest investments? He better be good.
Yeah, no doubt. And it just, different schools are going to approach that differently in terms of some of the Dukes of the world, and even Arizona to a lesser extent here recently, or some of these schools that really do want to make themselves an attractive destination for these one and done type of high level prospects, still value that more so than other programs who are maybe going, hey, we're going to go transfer heavy. We want to get old, stay old, which is Brad Underwood's motto. Then he went to last year and got younger. And now he's like, okay, I think I like the older thing a little bit better.
Yeah. Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt for a second? Sorry to interrupt, but like, it is interesting. I'm going through my Big Ten, we just got the poll from Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Like, who's our 1 through 18? We take part in that poll. Who's your freshman of the year? All this. And I'm looking at freshman of the year, like that was easy last year. It was Dylan Harper, and there was like one of the best freshman classes we've ever seen. The Big Ten really invested in freshmen. Now they're not. There's like 2 top 25 guys, I think, in the Big Ten, maybe 2 top 30 guys in the Big Ten this year. So the Big Ten kind of pivoted to the freshmen, and then they pivoted right away, man.
Yeah, and it is. It's interesting, especially for the 2026 class, I think, just to really see what that disconnect looks like. Going back to that Norlander article, which I thought was really interesting on CBS, just the fact that you have some of these higher level prep guys that are comparing themselves to prep guys in last year's class or the year before, when finances were out of control with unlimited NIL, with no regulation, where it's like, okay, some of these guys are getting $2-3 million as prep prospects. Teams just don't have that money anymore. Now that you're transitioning into the revenue sharing era, I think the expectation of what it takes to get a top level guy like that is so different from the prospect's perspective, from the agent's perspective, and the school's perspective right now, which I think even muddies the waters even more. So you really have to be careful in terms of how much you want to spend, because that budget is starting to get a little bit more condensed for you. But I think it's for 2026 for Illinois, I think the other thing that I would wonder about is there's a chance that you could get a lot of this roster back for next year, and that you really could invest most of your resources into retention and maybe piecing together a transfer here, a transfer there, because could get Mihailo Petrovic back potentially if he does have another year of eligibility. Andrei Stojakovic could come back for his senior year. You'd hope that David Mirkovic can grow into a bigger role as a sophomore, try to get Big Z back. Who knows what Tommy's future looks like? Obviously, I think the expectation would be, if he has the year that he's capable of having, that this would probably be his last season at Illinois. But who knows how much you want to go all out and say, hey, we've got a lot of opportunity and a lot of money waiting for you here to play your senior year at Illinois. So you could get a lot back, and that, I think, could complicate things a little bit more in terms of going after a Jervis or a Holmes and the opportunity that you could sell. Because I think with Boswell leaving, and there's going to be opportunity, but what does it look like? What are those guys' expectations, for a one and done type of prospect? If those guys see themselves as that, do they feel like they're going to be featured enough on next year's Illinois team if Illinois can get a lot of this core back? I wonder what that looks like from a sell standpoint.
Yeah, one of the biggest storylines, I think, in college basketball is this offseason coming up. Guys are probably going to have to take pay cuts. And how do they feel about that? Just because the rules have changed with NIL, we think, I guess, I'm assuming that too, Kyle, that they will take pay cuts, because we'll see what NIL actually is with the NIL Go system and revenue sharing and all that. So it's kind of all up in the air. I do want to hit on this before we talk about the current team and workouts that are now underway for the fall. Illinois had 2 in-state guys. In-state recruiting used to be a really big deal, and now it seems like recently it hasn't been, partly because most of the best prospects are leaving the state to go play at prep schools. And the class of 2027 is a perfect example of that, with Davion Thompson, Devin Cleveland, Jalen Mitchell. Illinois still recruiting all these guys, and they still are in-state guys, but they did host 2 in-state players, the top in-state players in each of the next classes. Jaxson Davis, the guard out of Gurnee Township up in or Warren Township up in Gurnee, and then Brady Pettigrew, 2028 kid. ESPN and Rivals both have him as a top 20 player. We haven't done our 2028 rankings quite yet, but good to see that in-state recruiting can still be there, and that Illinois is certainly very much involved. And Jaxson Davis is a winner, man. He's Illinois Mr. Basketball as a sophomore, which is hard to do. And then Brady Pettigrew already playing with Team USA and all of that. So obviously a very, very good prospect. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I think those are the heavy hitters that you want to prioritize in those classes, with them being in state. And I think both those guys, great fits for what Illinois wants to do. And you start to look ahead into the future. Obviously, Jaxson Davis 2 years down the line, Brady Pettigrew just entering his sophomore year, 2028 guys. So you're looking, there's zero certainty that far down the line, especially now. But I think both those guys are going to be high priorities for Illinois, and they should be. Jaxson Davis, like you said, winner, kind of that potential heir apparent to, if you get maybe 2 years out of Petrovic, then you plug him in. I think he can come in right away and help you as a on-ball creator, as a floor general, true point guard. I think his potential is sky high.
Does he remind you of anybody?
I'm terrible with comparisons. I
was watching this stuff, and it was like Michigan State guards just come to mind. Just those Michigan State guards always come to mind. And I don't know if it's like a Kalen Lucas or a Tyson Walker or something like that, but undersized. But man, I want him on my team. He can go get buckets. He can make other people better. He rebounds. He defends. Just does a little bit of everything, even if he is a little undersized.
Really tough. Yeah, I think he's one of those guys I think could become an instant fan favorite just with the in-state angle and the fact that I think like you said, I like that comparison a lot. Pettigrew is interesting too, because obviously he's got a lot of development to go, but he's already starting to blow up. Florida's offered him over the summer, which I don't know if there's a better guard cell in the country right now than what Todd Golden has, coming off that national championship team with what he did with Walter Clayton and those 3 guard lineups. So he's already drawn significant interest. But Bolingbrook, in-state guy, he's already big. He's 6'3", almost 6'4" already. He's just standing next to him. You wouldn't think he's a 2028 guy. You could feasibly see him coming into college in one of the next 2 years with just how much size he already has. Obviously, he has a lot of room to just continue physically developing, but he's a big guard, really smooth player. I was really impressed just watching what he's already done playing for Main Street's 15U. And I think he's a guy that is going to continue to blow up, and I expect that recruitment to get really crowded. I really like what I see from him as a scorer, as a guy who definitely has defensive upside, plays really hard, already has a pretty impressive dunk highlight reel on his tape. I mean, he likes to play above the rim. He's 15 years old, and he's dunking on guys. He'll put the ball on the floor, quick burst off the dribble, and he'll throw it down on you. I think he's really intriguing. But just to lay that foundation, obviously Illinois has been on Jaxson Davis for a long time already, even going into his junior year, and he's been to Champaign, and he's played in state title game at State Farm Center, and that's a guy that Illinois has a strong foundation with already. But just to get in early on those guys and really work, and I think those are going to be 2 of Illinois' top in-state targets moving forward, and rightfully so. I think both those guys have really high futures and are going to continue to be highly ranked national guys.
Yeah, I think Illinois is really smart to go overseas. It is fun just to have in-state guys too, because the state still produces really good talent, even if they go to prep schools most of the time. So it's cool that Jaxson has stayed around and he wants to win a state title after losing by 1 point last year in a really, really close matchup to Bennett Academy. All right, let's focus a little bit more on this team. We saw a lot of the players on the field before the game against Western Michigan. Brad Underwood and his staff were there as well. Just an Andre Stojakovic update. Knee injury is for certain. I've heard he's out for a few more weeks. Could be out a little bit here leading into the season. The good thing is he's a veteran. The good thing is could have been worse from what I was told. So good that he will get back, but I do think he'll miss probably a couple more weeks. There doesn't sound like a lot of worry that it could last into the season, but it might be close to the season. Also with Ty Rodgers, I know people have speculated by seeing him on the sideline a little bit without a knee brace on. He's still expected to miss significant time, but we haven't heard an actual timeline from Brad Underwood. So still waiting to get clarity on that, but I don't think this is one where we'll see Ty Rodgers ready for the season. At least that's what I have heard. So just a little bit of an injury update there. And boy, that's not a great injury start to the season to potentially lose Ty Rodgers for a long time, and then Andre Stojakovic to miss significant time leading up to the season. So not ideal, especially when both are kind of similar positions there, Kyle.
Yeah, no doubt. I think with Stojakovic, definitely as an older guy, as a guy who's played 2 years of high major basketball, you don't worry as much about it. I still think, though, it does hurt you because you just got Petrovic here, and you're trying to finally get your whole team together and try to start that gelling process, get guys comfortable playing with each other, really get Petrovic acclimated, and then you lose a really key piece. And so it just is, you just haven't had your entire team out on the floor for much time playing together, starting to build chemistry. And so I think that hurts you. But also I think it is an important fall for Stojakovic, even though he's played and even though you know what his skill set is. He's going to be playing a different role, a little bit of a different role, at least, than he was at Cal. You're trying to fit him more into a role at Illinois as a complementary guy. Now, a guy that's still probably going to score and a guy that you still want the ball in his hands. But I think it's going to look a lot different for him at Illinois this year in an ideal world than it did the last couple of years. And you just want to try to get him comfortable playing with Mihailo Petrovic, playing with Kylan Boswell, playing off of Tomislav Ivicic, and just finding comfort in what Illinois is asking him to do, simplifying things a little bit for him. And now that process stalls with him out. And so I think it does hurt you, because we've seen, even with guys that have had an entire offseason that have been transfers, we've seen some of Illinois' recent transfers that have turned out to be really impactful pieces start slow in the season, whether it was Marcus Damask, who got off to a slow start, Matthew Meyer, even Kylan Boswell last year. Like, it's a thing that happens, just being in a new environment and being in a little bit of a different role. Sometimes there is an adjustment period that takes place, and now you're taking really valuable reps and time on the floor away from Stojakovic with his new team in a new environment, in a new offense. And I think that does really hurt you. Now, I still think you feel good if you get him back to start the season that he's going to contribute and he's going to impact things, but it just slows down that process of getting him as comfortable and confident as possible. And I think that is going to hurt. And you hope that you can get him back as soon as possible, really get him on the floor and starting to build that chemistry with guys.
Speaking of an adjustment, and that's a great point about the transfers who do take some time, right? It's not hit the ground running. That's why it's so important to have guys like Boswell and Ivicic back, so that they can kind of lift up the boat before, Stojakovic and Mihailo Petrovic, right? Get adjusted to what everything is happening. I would include Ben Humrickhouse in that. We need to talk more about him. He's going to be an important piece to this team, but Mihailo Petrovic and David Mirkovic are also very important pieces of this team, and they're here, they're working out. David Mirkovic looks like he's having a blast. The way we see him at the football games, and heard really good things about the intensity he brings. Mihailo Petrovic is going through an adjustment period, and I think this was to be expected. I don't think he hit the ground running and it's like, oh my gosh, this guy is going to take over the world right away. So I think the next 2 months are going to be very, very important for him, but he's got to learn how to sometimes not play with the ball in his hands. And that's something he has not done in his career. So he's got to learn those things. Obviously, we have some defensive concerns about him, but I think these next 2 months are really important for him to settle in, not to force the issue, because there is Andre Curbelo ways about his game, which is a good thing, because you need somebody who can break down a defense, really handle the ball, open things up for everyone else. But also there can be a tendency to try to do too much. And I think that's going to be important over the next couple of weeks for Mihailo Petrovic, Kyle.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just kind of finding that balance with him. You need him to be your floor general, your playmaker, a guy who creates on the ball. You put in a lot of ball screens that other guys can play off of him. But Illinois didn't bring him in for it to be the Mihailo Petrovic show. Like, you've got veteran guys, you've got guys in Boswell and Ivicic and Stojakovic that you want to kind of be the focal points of that team and get comfortable and kind of lead your team. And so you want to be able to fit Petrovic in and find the balance with his role of being that point guard you need, being a guy who can break defenses down, but also to be able to get the most out of your other pieces and really complement those guys well and lead your offense to the best of its ability. And so, yeah, it's definitely going to be a process on that sense. And just the adjustment that he's making, based on what you've said, it sounds like the adjustment for him coming from overseas has been the starkest compared to some of the other guys, just in terms of understanding the language and just kind of adapting to American basketball and getting, starting to build those relationships with teammates. And so, yeah, you need him on the floor. You want your entire group out there with him to try and get everybody back. And I think that's going to be really important, just to really get him to be more comfortable, really get him to find the right role where he can really get the most out of his game, but also not try to do too much for you and not try to have some of those Curbelo tendencies that make you pull your hair out. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how that comes along. But man, is he important. He is
They've
one of, if not the biggest X factors on your team is how Mihailo Petrovic ultimately turns out. Because while you aren't necessarily tasking him with being the leader of this team, you're tasking him with quite a bit at that point guard spot. You invested a lot in him to be your point guard, and you need him to be at his best self pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, there's one criticism about the offseason. It's about, okay, if Petrovic weren't to be a great point guard or a good point guard right away, did you leave yourself with enough options, right? And I know they're going after Adam Miller. The great part is Kylan Boswell can do it. I have confidence that Kylan Boswell can be your starting point guard if you need him to be your starting point guard. But with Stojakovic out right now, he should play coming up. But Ty Rodgers, big question mark. That's a bummer. You lost him to injury. He was such an important piece. Just the versatility. He can handle the ball a little bit. Obviously, defense and rebounding. But you would be putting a lot on Keaton Wagler. The good news is it seems like the hype train continues for him, Kyle. They are very excited about what he will bring. I don't think they want the hype train to go out of control here, but could Wagler be way more than we thought? And I don't know if they planned on that, but say Petrovic isn't ready to hit the ground running as much as you hope. Like, it feels like they think Wagler can do a lot more than they expected, at least when they signed him. And that would be really important because that would just allow you to maybe have a little bit more wiggle room for Petrovic if Wagler is able to be a 15, 20-minute a game guy who can play off of Boswell, shoot, make good decisions, and at least try to be competitive defensively. Because if you do have Boswell and Wagler in your backcourt with Stojakovic and Humrickhouse or Merkovich and the Ivasic boys, that's a huge lineup. That is a very, very big lineup. So I don't want to get way too ahead of our skis with Keaton Wagler, but there's a lot of good buzz about him.
And you'd rather have it that way than the other way. It's really important for this team that you have that level of buzz coming out about one of those freshman guards, because as we've talked about, you didn't think you were going to need it, but now you really need it. As you laid out there, you really are going to need a guy like Keaton Wagler to at least contribute, at least be a quality bench option for you. That I still have some reservations about how out of control maybe some of the expectations could potentially get for him. As you mentioned, like I still want to pump the brakes a little bit in terms of, hey, is he going to be a guy who plays on the ball a lot as a freshman? Is he a guy who's going to hit the ground running early and be somebody that not only is giving you quality minutes and isn't necessarily hurting you off the bench, but you're actually asking for decision making from and for certain things that maybe he is ready for. Maybe he ends up really surprising and giving you a lot more than you thought. But I still, to me, would feel the most comfortable with the pressure on him being still relatively low, still expecting something from him, still needing something from him, and maybe across the season as he continues to develop, get more comfortable, you start to get more and more out of his game as the season goes along. But I would caution with him, just from my own personal reservations, and maybe I end up being completely wrong about it, but just early on in the season, especially if Petrovic is maybe a little bit slower moving than we thought, to expect that Keaton Wagler is going to come in and be a 20-minute a game on-ball option for you right away, because I still just think there's going to be an adjustment period for him. I still want to see it at high major game speed with him too, and the physicality of it all. And just, I think there's going to be, even at the highest 100th percentile outcome of what Wagler is as a freshman, there's going to be inconsistency. And so I wonder, I still would hope that you're not asking too much from him. I still think you want to find that sweet spot of being excited about him, trying to get more out of his game as he develops, but not putting so much pressure on him early. Like, man, we need you to not only contribute, but we need you to do a lot. We're going to be asking for a lot from you. I don't think that's what you want from him. You want him to have a little bit more of a softer landing while still being an important piece. And I think the shooting will translate. And I think the IQ and the decision-making will translate, but you'd hope more so in a lower volume role. And so I me personally, I still want to see it a little bit, but there's no doubt he's going to be important. And I think the buzz is real. And I think he is going to help this team. I'd much rather be in a place where you can rely on an older Petrovic and kind of bring him along more so than saying, hey, we need quite a bit from Keaton Wagler that we didn't think we were going to.
Yeah, like if you're going into the year saying Keaton Wagler's starting next to Boswell and we need him to be 8 to 12 points a game, I'm like, I don't know if that's the best plan. But I haven't seen the practices, right? But I did come into this year, like if you would have told me in May, I'm like, oh, Keaton Wagler is going to play fringe rotation role, one of him or Brandon Lee, average 2 or 4 points a game. Now, like maybe my expectation is 15 to 20 minutes and 6 to 8 points. Like that I think is a healthy kind of expectation. Anything over that, I get a little nervous. I'm a little skittish about it too, Kyle. But that would be a big addition because they need something like that. And if he ends up averaging 10 points a game, being in a Big Ten all freshman team with a freshman class that's not that loaded, like that'd be great. That'd be phenomenal. I'm not going in with that expectation.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you just gotta find the right balance with him too, just in terms of obviously you want him to thrive and you want him to be in a position where he can help you and you can get the most out of his game. But me personally, I still want to see it a little bit before I say, hey, Keaton Wagler, 4th or 5th most important guy on this team, 20 minutes a game. And you're asking for so much from him, because I still think while I'm sure he has had a great summer, as it sounds like, and I'm sure that he is maybe ahead of where Illinois thought he was going to be. Still different when you get into playing UConn and you get into playing Tennessee and you get into high major game speed, and he is going to struggle
right away.
He's going to feel it early, and he's going to have to adjust to that, just like any freshman, just like Kaspars Yakichonis and Will Riley are now in the NBA after being one and done's had to. For him, he's absolutely going to have to go through some of those things. So you still don't want to feel like you're expecting the world from a guy like him. But I think it's great that there's excitement. It's great that he's had the summer he's had, and he absolutely is going to be an important piece for this team with the lack of guard depth that this roster now has with the Rogers injury, with the Stojakovic injury. And if Petrovic maybe takes a little bit longer to fully find himself, you're going to need him to at least give you solid minutes and contribute early.
Yeah, you need Boswell to really enforce his will in that backcourt. The front court is really exciting. I think we all expect. I just filled out my all Big Ten team. I did put Tommy on my first team. It's a loaded first team when you add guys like Jaxson Davis and Bennett Sturtz and Donovan Dent. And obviously the 2 guys coming back from Purdue. I think Tommy could have a really, really special year. But then you also got really good pieces around him. As I said, I think Ben Humrickhouse is way more comfortable and confident. He's been really good in workouts, from what I understand, playing at a higher level and just confident in who he is and what he is. But then David Mirkovic brings a jolt of energy and toughness. And Big Z is maybe the highest variance player on this team. We saw that. Like we could see at Arkansas, he was their best player in some games and then unplayable in other games. I think he could be a frustrating player. My goal for him would just be try to be the best backup big man in the country and just bring 40 minutes of Ivasic to the floor. So that's kind of my expectation. But that 4 spot's really interesting too with Humrickhouse and Mirkovic. I like all the options you have there, Kyle.
Yeah, and I think that 4 spot is going to be kind of the quote-unquote position battle to watch as you enter the fall, because I think there is some uncertainty just in terms of what that rotation is going to look like. You have at least a good idea of what it's going to look like on the rest of the roster in terms of the backcourt and Stojakovic, and obviously Tommy's going to play a lot, and you have Big Z coming in after him. But what that 4 spot looks like, I think, is the one where it could go a lot of different directions. And I would probably lean towards personally that Ben Humrickhouse is going to be your starter early. I don't know if you would disagree with that, but I
agree with that. I think the known of it, the veteran of it, but also he can shoot the heck out of the ball. And I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to shoot the ball better. I think he's going to be more confident. So whether that's 38%, 40%, I think we're going to be in that range more than the 34, 35 that we were last year. Not that it was bad. It's just the consistency of it was maddening with Ben when he had 0 for 7, 0 for 6. Like, you got to get those games out of it. He's got to rebound better. Like that's the biggest thing for me. I don't have a lot of questions about his shot making. It's you got to add some rebounding too, because if you don't, I know Mirkovic is going to do that.
Yeah, I think he's just going to have the trust, having been in the program, and based on what you've said in terms of the confidence that he's played with, I think he's probably the leader in the clubhouse to be your starter. But I still think that can play itself out a lot of different ways as the season goes on. We originally heard when Big Z came in, hey, they want to play Tommy and Big Z together. What does that look like? I think there's definitely a limit to how much you can do that, but I would imagine you're still going to try to explore that at times, especially in some of these bye games early, to see what that looks like. I don't think that's going to be your primary lineup at any point, but how much can you play those two guys together? If Z ends up coming along and shooting the heck out of the ball, and you want to get him on the floor as much as possible, you don't want to limit him to just the 12 minutes that Tommy's off the floor. You want to try and get him on the court. We'll see how that comes along. I still have a lot of questions, especially on the defensive end, about what that looks like, but we'll see. And then Mirkovic is kind of the wild card, because I think he's got a lot of potential, and he gives you an element in that front court that you just don't have anywhere else, with his physicality, with his rebounding, with the fact that he is a lot more comfortable playing with his back to the basket than even your two centers are. And so you can maybe play some booty ball or play him out of some post-ups, let him make decisions where he's a solid decision maker. Like he gives you a different element at that 4 spot than Humrickhouse. He's got questions about the consistency of his jumper. So if you want to maximize the spacing and get the most out of that lineup, that's where you would turn to Ben Humrickhouse. And that's why I think he's probably going to be a guy that you turn to early. But David Mirkovic is a guy that I would not be surprised if, especially as you go through the season and you get into the winter, you get into Big Ten play, he's becoming more comfortable. Wouldn't be surprised if he either takes over as your starter, or if he's a guy that just you start to see the minutes tick up and up and up, and all of a sudden he becomes a really trusted, relied upon guy later in the season. And so I think that'll be really interesting just to see how that rotation shakes out. And yeah, I think I agree with you. Like Humrickhouse, I think he's going to shoot it better. I think even just the threat, even last year when he was inconsistent, the threat of him out there, you can't leave him alone, and defenses have to account for him, and he's going to space the floor. And so I think he fits with what you want to do, but we still need to see him shoot 38 to 40%. Like there's a world where he still just isn't as confident once it gets into live game action, and you start to turn more to Mirkovic or to other guys. So we'll see how that plays out. I think that's kind of the most fascinating just minutes battle heading into the fall that I think will continue to play out during the season, is what does that 4 spot look like? What does the front court rotation as a whole look like in terms of a breakdown of minutes as the season gets underway?
Yeah, we don't talk a lot about the 2 best players in the team. With Kylan, it's just shoot it better and kind of be the assertive guy he was late in the year, especially when Kylan or KJ was struggling. He's got to be that guy all year now. So I'm interested to see that, because he hasn't had to be that a lot through college, and he kind of took that role, and I hope he runs with it this year. Tommy, it's just, can he get to the free throw line more? Like, he's going to make a lot of threes. He's probably going to lead the country in 7-footer threes. And he's so good, and he's going to rebound the ball, but can he be more effective on that block, get to the free throw line, get some easy buckets a little bit more? Because especially against those high major teams, he was not very effective doing that. So those are the 2 areas I'm looking for that. And then Jake Davis, just keep doing what you're doing, just defend a little bit better. And Brandon Lee, defend. When you come to the game, defend. Like, keep it simple. That's what you got to do. Defend, attack the rim, see if you can finish. I just want to hit on a couple other guys. Any other thoughts on those?
Yeah, Boswell, I think, is the important one, because I do want to see that from the jump of the season, from the get-go, opening night on. I want to see the Kylan Boswell that we saw in March of last year, from a mentality standpoint, from a confidence standpoint. For a lot of last year, especially early in the season, it just felt like he took a back seat and just wasn't super engaged. I mean, defensively, he's always going to be consistent, but offensively, it felt like he just wasn't very confident, wasn't very engaged. Obviously, we saw that manifest itself into a really down shooting season. And I think confidence is just a big part of that. Like, come out early in the season with that confidence, with that mindset. And I think you will start to see him make some shots early, and that'll carry itself over. And so I just want to see him early in the season. I want to see a locked in version of Kylan Boswell. I want to see the guy with that look in his eye that he had in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament last year, where he really takes control of this team with the ball in his hands. He's aggressive. He attacks. He's confident in everything he does. And
obviously rate went through the roof last year.
Free throw rate. Yep. Especially late in the season. He got to the free throw line a ton. And obviously defensively, you want him to set the tone for you on that end and that to be really consistent, which it was for the most part it was last year, but there was a time even in the middle of the season where that tapered off a little bit, where he was really going through it mentally. I just want to see him in the right headspace early in the season. That's going to be so important because we talked about earlier with Petrovic, like, and Wagler still having the uncertainty around him a little bit as a freshman. Boswell has to be really steady, really consistent, and the guy that you can lean on at all times. And you can't really have the ups and downs with him that he's had throughout his college career. You need the most consistent, confident version of Kylan Boswell from the start of this season. And so I'm going to be really looking for that because you could kind of just tell with him at times, to me last year, when he was engaged, when he was confident, when he wasn't. And you just kind of tell with his body language, with his involvement in the offense, with his aggressiveness. There were games where he was really involved and really engaged, in games where he just felt like he's kind of taking a back seat and really didn't make much of an impact. And you need him night to night to be really, really impactful for you. So I'm hoping to see that. And it sounds like he is that, and he's ready to take that on, but you really need that from him early.
All right, we got Big Ten Media Days, October 9th. It's sneaking up on us this year because Illinois football has a good team and has a lot of the buzz. But it's good, Kyle, to get some basketball talk in here as workouts begin. Practice starts next week for these guys leading into the fall. So it's a really talented team. The injuries a little bit concerning. Got a lot to work through. Really tough schedule. This is a really talented team. Like I think there's a clear top 4 talent-wise in the Big Ten. For me, that's Purdue, Michigan, UCLA, and Illinois. I do think like the Wisconsins of the world, like USC is a wild card team with the talent they have, but it's a really talented team that's got a high ceiling. I'm interested to see what the floor is when they come out in non-conference play.
Yeah, and you'd hope that it's a lot higher than you saw. You hope this team can be a little bit more there early in the season, just in terms of a chemistry standpoint, just in terms of having that foundation that I think you do have with Kylan Boswell and Thomas Laljevicic, where you can hit the ground running a little bit more. And I know that the injuries will obviously hurt that a little bit, and you're still trying to piece different guys in. And, you know, with how important Petrovic and Stojakovic are, you want them on the floor playing together. And there's still going to be a gelling process that has to take place, but you'd hope that early on in the season, and it certainly seems like with the way that Illinois is scheduled, the fact that you're going to be hosting Texas Tech the second week of the season, that you're going to be playing UConn on Black Friday, it seems like Brad Underwood expects that this team is going to be ready for some of those high profile matchups early, and you'll really get a chance to test yourself. And so I'm interested to see that. And just in terms of Big Ten Media Days, like, where are you at on the defensive end of the floor? Because I go back to last year where Brad Underwood came out and said, I think an 8th grade team could put 100 on us, or whatever his quote was. Like, he'll tell it how it is in terms of where you're at in certain areas. And so we'll see. Defensively, I definitely still have some questions about this team, and we'll see how that plays itself out. But yeah, it's an older team. It's guys that have been there. It's guys that I think fit really well together. You talked about it on the last podcast. I think the offensive upside for this team is sky high, and you'd hope that you can really hit the ground running with that and really score early. And maybe if the defense has to take some time to come along and some different things here and there, that you could score and you can lean on your veteran guys to lead your offense and early in the season. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, I think the Big Ten is as strong this year as it's been since some of the Io Kofi team and some of those years where you had 3 or 4 top 10 teams. I think it's a really strong Big Ten this year. I think there's still, even with an older team that you'd hope has a higher floor, I still think there's a decently wide range of outcomes for this Illinois team within the Big Ten. Part of that is what other teams do and some of these wild cards that you mentioned, how they end up panning out. But some of it too is just what Illinois ends up reaching in terms of a ceiling. And so it'll be really interesting to see, and we'll get a sense of where some of these teams are at Big Ten Media Days, but it's going to be fascinating to watch play out, and we'll get a lot of answers in non-conference play for Illinois because that's how Brad Underwood's scheduled, and it's awesome.
Cal Tausk, this was awesome, man. Great job. We'll catch up soon, all right?
Awesome. Thanks, man.